going to go ahead and share my screen. And every time I share my screen, Teams wants to hide somewhere. So let me just bring that back up here. Can folks see my screen okay? A thumbs up or a yes? You can speak, you can chat.
Yes.
There we go. We like when things work.
Yes.
All right, let's bring this up and let's start chatting a little bit about new quizzes. And we'll get to that part here in a second. We're going to talk about why new quizzes in the timeline. We're going to take a look at that quizzes are already turned on in your course for use, talk about different migration options, some of the new features, new question types, kind of where we'd like to see some improvement still. And then we're going to go ahead and build a new quiz as a group. So that's kind of our outline for this morning. I think currently we have a couple hours allotted here. We'll see if we use that full 2 hours or not. And I'll plan on taking a break around 11. We will see how my voice holds up. I've been training for the last 2 days, 2 hours at a pop. And I'm also in a play, so we're doing rehearsals every night. So my voice is definitely getting a workout this week. Let's top in here. Okay, why new quizzes? Instructure, which is a company that makes Canvas, they've been working on this new quiz tool probably for the last 2 or 3 years and slowly been adding different layers and new improvements. And we've had a couple of instructors at CSU who have been piloting it probably for the last year or so. So the current timeline that Instructure has out states that for summer 2022, basically new quizzes will become the quiz tool in Canvas. Classic quizzes will be there, but you won't be able to really administer a classic quiz. You'd be able to go back and look at a previous classic quiz to see how students did on a quiz and check their scores and so forth, but you wouldn't really be able to use classic quizzes a year from now. And so I think technically it may be in July or so. We're probably just going to prepare the campus for the start of our summer term next in 2022. Folks should be using new quizzes, knowing that that's the tool that will be available for this summer. Let's think here. The goal, well, I'll talk about goals here in a second. What to do now, given this timeline? We think our main goal is trying to get the campus familiar with, we've got this change coming. We don't want this to come as a surprise to anyone. We want folks to feel like they've had enough time to make this transition. So right now, our goal would be to try and get folks, we'd like you to become familiar with new quizzes. What's the interface look like? What's it like if I try and migrate one of my current classic quizzes to a new quiz? How does that come over? Did it come over well? Is there something I need to go in and fix or tweak or update to make sure that it's going to look and work well for my students as a new quiz? And so getting your feet wet at just trying to create a new quiz. What are the new question types? What's the interface look like? It's a different interface, so it's going to take a little getting used to. So we're just trying to get folks up to speed on this. I'll continue to probably hold new quiz workshops, I'm sure, throughout the entire year as we come up here, probably at least a couple of months, to try and make sure that folks have a way to become familiar with using this new tool. And again, already mentioned the goal is, given this transition, we want to make sure people know it's coming and they've got plenty of time to get there. Can you migrate a classic quiz now? Classic, huh? That's interesting. Maybe I'm working on Latin there. I've got a whole handout, and I'll show you where that's located here in a little bit. But yeah, if I have a basic classic quiz, all the questions are built right into the quiz. I'm not pulling anything from a question bank. I'll show you, we're going to do one of these here in a second. You can migrate that quiz, and in general, it comes over okay. If folks who have used question groups in classic quizzes, well, in a classic quiz, I can create a question group either right there within a classic quiz, or I can pull questions from a question bank and create question groups. But if I built question groups right within my classic quiz, and I'm not using question banks again, then yep, those can come over, and those will migrate over pretty well. We have kind of a way to migrate question banks. It's got a few steps to it right now. So I've got instructions on how you can migrate a question bank, but we're also expecting instructors supposed to be making a migration tool that's supposed to do things like migrate question banks, and we're expecting to see that by the end of this semester. So we're going to kind of keep our eye out for that one, and then once it's out, kind of test that and get a feel for what we can do. What I can't migrate right now, if I've got a classic quiz that pulls questions from a question bank and then they're put into question groups on the quiz, then those don't migrate well right now. So that's probably one of the main use cases that I don't have a good migration path right now. And as I say, I've got a document that walks you through how to do each one of these, and I'll show you where that's at as we work our way through this workshop. Can I use new quizzes. So some things to consider why you perhaps may not move to new quizzes too quickly. One, if CSU, if you're working with CSU Online, they use a proctoring tool called HonorLock. And HonorLock currently Instructure has not made certain information available to third-party tools like HonorLock to be able to easily integrate with new quizzes. So currently HonorLock does not integrate with new quizzes. So if I'm teaching for CSU Online and I need to be able to use proctoring, I probably won't use my new quiz with my students because I can't do that, use my proctoring tool. Respondus Lockdown browser, they have found a way to work with new quizzes. So for folks on main campus, resident instruction courses, if you want to use a new quiz with your students and use Lockdown browser, there is a way to do that. Again, if I rely heavily on classic question banks, I think you should be becoming familiar with new quizzes and so forth, but because I can't migrate a whole lot of question banks right now, you may be waiting a little bit to maybe fully go to new quizzes. If you do a lot of work with math formulas, in classic quizzes, math formulas use a tool called LaTeX. And in new quizzes, they use a formula editing tool called MathQuell, and they're slightly different. So if I migrate a quiz over, a classic quiz over to new quizzes that use LaTeX into MathQuell, that's probably going to take a little bit of cleanup and just something to keep in mind as you're thinking about the time that you might need to get over to new quizzes. Let's talk about some of the new features, and then we'll show you some of these. New question types, categorization. And the example that I might give is, I'll give you a list of different animals and so forth, and you need to properly put them into the category. Are they a mammal? Are they a reptile? Or perhaps I've got a few red herrings in there that don't actually belong in either category. There's an easy ordering tool. Again, I can arrange the Great Lakes largest to smallest. There's a hotspot tool where I can, show a particular image to students and they have to click on and say, this is the stomach, the esophagus, or whichever. That one's got a little bit of a caveat. It's not fully accessible. So if you're working with students who might have a sight impairment, then a hotspot question would probably be one that they might not be able to navigate or be able to answer that particular type of question. And the stimulus question, which is kind of neat, I can show a picture, an image, a video, an article, and then based on that article or that information, I can then ask multiple questions related to that particular piece of stimulus. And we'll take a look at one of those looks like, and we'll build one of those here in a second. I can shuffle answers per question. Currently in classic quizzes, I can say, shuffle kind of the entire quiz, kind of move the questions around. But this literally lets me say question by question. I can go ahead and shuffle the possible answers that each student sees. I can, if I'm allowing multiple attempts on a quiz, I can put in a cooling off period or a waiting period that says, I know you just rushed through taking this particular quiz and it's kind of fresh in your mind. And if you could take it again right away, you might get the questions right just because you just saw the questions and you might be able to make a better guess the next time versus, hey, I need you to go take a little time perhaps and review your notes or your study materials and then come back and take the attempt. We've got more regrading options in new quizzes. Classic quizzes, I think there's 3 question types that you can use regrade with. In new quizzes, almost all the question types can be regraded. A little bit easier to do time accommodations. If I'm working with students who have a documented learning disability and they get X amount more time on a quiz compared to their peers in their course. Currently in classic quizzes, I have to touch each quiz that student's going to take and add that additional time for the student on each quiz. In new quizzes, I can just set that up and say, hey, for the entire class, for every quiz this particular student's going to take, give them 1.5 the amount of time compared to the amount that I'm setting for their peers. So there's some very nice new features coming in with new quizzes. I'll take a look here. I'll explain this one a little bit better here. When we get to this as we're building a quiz, I'll show you what this one means. And fill in the blank grading. There's a little bit more granularity for fill in the blank right now in classic quizzes. I can set up, if I say, who wrote Romeo and Juliet? And the answer is Shakespeare. Well, when I type in Shakespeare as the possible answer for fill in the blank question, students have to spell that exactly the way I spelled it to get the correct points or get the points for that particular answer for that question. I also have the ability to say it's Shakespeare and I can add, and Shakespeare can be spelled this way, this way, this way. So if the students spell it one of the 3 ways that I threw out as a possible way to say Shakespeare, then they could get the points for that question. with the new fill in the blank and new quizzes, we have what's called Levenstein distance. And I'm not exactly sure who Levenstein was, but the idea that I could say close enough. If it's in one character or two characters of three characters of the correct spelling of the word, I'll count it as correct and it'll automatically award the points for that. So we'll take, when we go to build a fill in the blank question, we'll show you what that looks like. Needs improvement. Initially, if you use the designer role at all in your courses, the standard designer role, for whatever reason, they can create a classic quiz, but the standard designer role could not create a new quiz. So we've added a new role into Canvas. So if you have somebody and you want to assign them, if you're working with an instructional designer, or you just have somebody helping you build the course, we have created a new role called designer-new quizzes. So if you wanted to add somebody to help you with regular designing in your course, as well as be able to create a new quiz, you can add in this new role if you have that need. Partial credit. It's available for multiple answer and fill in the blank type questions. I'll give you, you get 2 out of 3 right, I'll give you a percentage of the score that you could have earned. But currently for matching and categorization and ordering, it's kind of all or nothing. Either you got them all right and I'll give you the points, or you got part of it wrong and you don't get any points. And in that case, if I wanted to do partial credit for those types of questions, I would have to go in and touch each student's attempt and go to that particular question and kind of adjust their score accordingly if I wanted to give them partial credit. We're certainly hoping that they will come up with partial credit for those new question types. We talked about proctoring. Kind of what's different is in classic quizzes, usually I put my images within the files within my course in Canvas and pull from those files and load those onto my Canvas quiz questions. With new quizzes, currently, the images are going to live on your local computer and then you'll pull those up into your new quiz. So it's a little bit different workflow if you want to add images into a question on a new quiz. They just live in a different place. And let's think here. Currently in new quizzes, or excuse me, in classic quizzes, when I bring up in Speedgrader, the students who took my quiz, I can click at the top and say, hey, for question 5 was an essay question. I can click and say, I want to, as I work my way down my student list, I want you to just show me question 5, take me to question 5 for each student, so I can quickly jump to that question and grade that essay question. That I currently don't have that functionality in new quizzes. I'd have to go into each student in Speedgrader, go find the essay question, grade it, go to the next student, go find the essay question. So we don't have that feature right now. And in classic quizzes, when a student finishes a quiz, I get a notification right there in Canvas that tells me, oh, you know what, this student has finished this classic quiz, and especially if it has a short answer or essay question that I need to grade, it gets my attention and lets me know I can go in and start grading that student. I don't get notified in Canvas with new quizzes that a student finished a quiz, but I can, depending on how I have my notifications set up in Canvas, Canvas can send me an email that tells me, oh, Kevin just finished this new quiz, and then that could prompt me then to go in and grade Kevin's attempt. So I can get notified, but it's not the same way as we do with classic quizzes right now. In classic quizzes, we have what's called question banks, and they belong to the course. Wherever the course goes, those item banks follow the course. In new quizzes, item banks currently belong to the person, which is just it's a different mindset. And I can share an item bank that belongs to me. I can share it with other people. But if I leave CSU or if I delete my item bank, if you had used my item bank, if you had put some of my questions on your quizzes, those questions would stay on your quizzes. But if I delete my item bank, you would no longer have access to my item bank to build any future quizzes. So, so for right now, if I'm the instructor of a course and I'm creating item banks, I likely might share with a co-teacher or a TA in the course. I don't know if I would personally be sharing amongst other courses just because of this idea of if I left or did something with my item bank, it could negatively impact somebody in a different course. So, so personally, I'm not a big advocate of currently sharing item banks between courses. Canvas is talking about possibly also bringing back the ability to either have an item bank belong to a person or a course. We're kind of monitoring that to see if that will appear, and if so, what does that look like? All right, so I'm giving you a ton of information. I'm going to get out of PowerPoint here. I sent yesterday, and hopefully for most of you who had enrolled in this course, I sent out couple of different files. One was my fairly long training handout it's an overview of new quizzes overview. And this kind of, all the things we just talked about in that PowerPoint and more are in this overview file. This also happens to be posted up on our website, and I'll show you where here in a little bit. But this, as we just went through all that information, that was a ton to absorb. I just want you to remember certain concepts that we're talking about, and then you can refer back to this document or other documents out on the web if you need to kind of delve back in and remember the details for certain things. I had also sent out a copy of the exercises that we're going to use today in this workshop. This is a virtual hands-on workshop, so we're going to learn by doing. So we're going to work our way down through these exercises. And as a result of that, hopefully get you starting to feel a bit more familiar with new quizzes so you can go and play a little bit. And I'd also sent out, just because I could attach as many files as I wanted to my email, you should have also received a list of the training accounts that we're using today in this course. And so you each are going to have a training course for today as we're working through the workshop, and you've got a way to log into that. And we're going to take a look at how to do that right now, because I want to get you into Canvas so we can start playing with new quizzes. So in the chat, let me put on chat here. I see participants. Did anyone not receive my handouts? And Andrea, I'll probably work on that question at the end of the workshop, okay? Registered late, okay, so Bruce, let me get you here. Bruce, hopefully you can see my screen here, Bruce. I'm about to add you in here with an instructor account. That's interesting. So Bruce, you're going to be instructor 137, okay? So folks, what I'd like you to do is, so the preferred web browsers, as you may or may not know with Canvas, are either Firefox or Chrome. They tend to work best with Canvas. And as I always tell people, does that mean you can't use Safari? No, you can use Safari, but Safari, I pick on Safari because often Safari is the one where somebody will come in and say, hey, I can't see this button in my gradebook in Safari. Huh, can you try Firefox? Oh, the button's right there. So in general, we tend to have the greatest success. If you're using Safari and it works for you, great. If you encounter a concern, have Firefox or Chrome as a backup. But ideally, if you could open Firefox or Chrome right now, and I need you to go to the Canvas login page, which is canvas.colostate.edu. And if you go there, normally you'd log in with your EID. We're not logging in with our EID today. We're going to log in with our training accounts. So if everyone can get to this login page, canvas.colostate.edu, and then when you click on the non-credit login, the username is going to be the word instructor, and then the number that you had on that training sheet I sent out. And I've got it here. If you don't have that in front of you, if you need a number, let me know. I happen to be instructor 100, so I'm typing instructor 100, no space. And then we all use the same password, which is CSU Canvas, all lowercase. And that should get you into Canvas with your training account. In the chat or by speaking up, can you let me know if you're having any concerns getting in with your training account, or if you need a training account? Now watch that for a second. I'm going to take silence as golden and that folks are doing okay. So hopefully we are now in Canvas with our training account. You should see a couple of courses here. I'm going to have you click on this first one, which says Training Admin New Quizzes Training. So that should be on your dashboard here in Canvas. If you don't see it, please let me know. And I want you to click on that New Quizzes Training. And that should take you into one of my test courses, and we're going to go take a new quiz through the eyes of a student. Okay, you can get there a number of times. I put a link here on the home page. You can click on quizzes underneath here. You may also see an announcement in here. You can see over here under to do, because I've got a due date here. I could click on here and take the new quiz. So one of these ways, clicking here or under quizzes, can you click on new quizzes, all question types. And you should bring up the initial screen that students would see. And it shows them that it has a time limit. It shows them a due date. If I had any other instructions here about whether they can use notes or anything like that, those would be listed here also. And then you should at this you should be at the screen. Let's go ahead and click begin to start the quiz as a student. It's a slightly different look and feel. New Quizzes is an external tool to Canvas. Classic Quizzes is built right into the base, into the foundation of Canvas, which has its pros and cons. One of the cons is it's hard to update it because you have to change a lot of the code in the original Canvas tool to get it to work properly. New Quizzes actually technically is what's called an LTI. It technically lives a little bit outside of Canvas, which makes it easy for them to modify and make updates to it. Notice here at the top, I've got a countdown. I can see how much time is left. I've got a submit button here, and there'll be one at the bottom. And I just get to start seeing the different questions here. Here's one of the first ones, ordering. And we'll have to see if I can remember or not, but you're welcome to watch me or give your best shot. I'm here also as a student. Let's think here. Find out if I'm right or not. Next one, I don't know how often you see a true-false question. I tend to see true-false questions on quizzes that say something along the lines of, I have read and agreed to the CSU academic integrity policy, and have students answer true or false. We've got one here about Dr. McConnell. I'm picking on US presidents in their home state, so this is a matching question. Let's see what we got. And you know what, matching, so we know that this one will not, either I get all or nothing in terms of points. So I think I'll try and get all of them just so I can actually get some points on this one. It looks like I've got this, I've got a duplicate in here. That's interesting. I'm going to skip that one. Number 5 here is a typical multiple choice question. Who's the current president of CSU? We have some of our former presidents. Cam Ram, I don't think has ever made it to president, but obviously Dr. McConnell's our current president. And following right on the heels of that, notice here is what's called a stimulus question. On the left-hand side, I've put a picture of Dr. McConnell. I've gone out and copied some information from an article from the web that the students I'm expecting to read through here and absorb this. And then over here on the right-hand side, now I can ask specific questions related to the stimulus here on the left. Let's think here. And here I happen to have, again, multiple choice and a fill-in-the-blank question. I can come on down here. One of my favorites, the only person to attend CSU and win an Academy Award was Keith. If I can spell Keith's name right. Moving on down, here's a new hotspot question. Identify Colorado on this US map. So the student just has to be able to click somewhere, and wherever they click, did they get the correct one? They'll get the points. If they don't, they click somewhere else on the map, then they won't get the points. Coming down for me, number 10, multiple answer. There's multiple possible right answers, which does allow for partial credit. We know Becky Hammond was a standout CSU basketball player. Amy Van Dyken, I've misspelled Amy's middle name, was an outstanding slimmer and Olympic gold medal winner. And looks like I'm going to look at my thing. I've got a couple of duplicates in here. I'm going to skip this one again because it's a duplicate. And yeah, I'll have to go check this out. Down to number 15 is a basic kind of calculation question where I can put in a randomization and it's randomly pulling different numbers. So each student sees like a different set of numbers to apply to be able to answer the question. So this one has to be asking me to calculate. Here's another true false. Well, I thought I'd clean this up. Here's what come number 18 is a categorization question. So here's one of those where, is it a mammal? Is it a reptile? Is it possible of neither? And let's see if we get some of these right. I'm not sure what Gumby is, but pretty sure Gumby is neither a mammal or a reptile as far as I know. What is 3 squared? Pretty basic math question on that one. We've a couple of repeats back in here. I do have to clean up this one. And again, I can see my timer here at the top. And then I can go back and take a look and see if there's any that I need to get to. And then when I'm done, I can click submit. And here it's telling me there's some answers that some questions I have not answered. I've done that purposely. I could go back here if I needed to. I could click out of here and go back and answer those questions. And then at the end of the day, I click submit, and I can submit my quiz. It will do its grading, and I've set it to show me a certain amount of information. I think I would do better given that I designed this quiz. But I can see I've taken one attempt, I set this create the highest score, and I've got it set so it will show me all the results as a student, which one I got wrong or right. So that was to give you an experience of seeing what a new quiz looks like from a student's perspective. Any questions in taking the quiz? And I'll watch chat, or you're welcome to speak up, whatever works for you. But
Kevin, I had a lot of multiples on mine.
Yes, yeah, I did. I had imported this one more than a couple times because I was playing with it, so that was a mistake on my part.
All right.
I have a question, Kevin.
Yes.
Can you put like comments so when they get a wrong and an incorrect answer, then can you put the comments that help guide them or anything?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yep, we'll show you how to do that.
Okay.
Drop down doesn't appear after you select an answer with the multiple choice. The drop down doesn't appear. Gail, I'm trying to, when you say the multiple choice doesn't appear, can you expound on that a little bit for me? And actually, what you don't have all options available after the selection. Let's take a look here. We'll create a multiple choice one here in a little bit, and let's see if that's going to provide what we need. Okay, good. Cecilia, thank you for jumping in there. So we'll take a look at, so Liz was asking, you know, that had I set Levenstein up for Washington, and I don't think I had. I think I just spelled it one way. But we'll show you here in just a moment how you can do that. So let's go. So now I want to get out of this quiz. So notice up here in the top right is a return button, and that's what takes you back into your Canvas course. So can you go up here to the top right and click return? And that'll take you back into your course. And then can you go back to your dashboard over here on the far left? Because I want you to go into a training course where you're then an instructor, so you can actually create and design a quiz. So I've clicked return in the top right. And then over here on the very, very far left, I'm clicking on dashboard or courses. And now I want you to go to this course that should be towards the bottom that says training course that matches the number that you used to log in with. Mine is training course 100. So if you can, again, back to your dashboard.
Kevin, I don't have that Canvas training course in mine. I just have the quiz training.
Okay, and which number, what instructor number?
I'm 119.
I don't either.
I don't have it either.
Interesting. Okay, let's take a look here. Bring up a different screen while we're looking here. Now you get to see some of the behind the scenes look of an administrator at CSU. And who mentioned that they don't say, oh, that's interesting. Look at that. Normally they should be all kinds of instructors in here. Okay, let me take a quick look here. I thought I had run this file last week, but if you can hold with me for a second here. And let's see if we can get these folks back in. Let's see, we're using 1 through 100. Just double check this here. And now I'm going to go back into here. So I'm reloading those enrollments that I thought I had put in at the end of last week when I was prepping for this workshop. Now let's see. So now let me go back to my other browser where I'm not an administrator of everything. So now folks, can you click on dashboard And for folks who said they could not see their training course, can you let me know if you can see that course now?
Mine is now there. Thank you.
Good. We like when things work.
Mine's there too.
Good. Just a little hiccup in the road here. Okay. So now, if you can click back on Dashboard, and now, can you let me know if there's anybody who cannot see it? Otherwise, can you click on this training course? And this is a brand new blank course in Canvas, not published. And now let's bring up, here's where we're going to start playing with the exercises that we have set up for this new quizzes workshop. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to go migrate a classic quiz. So you're in your training course. Can you click on the quizzes item on the left course menu? And you should see a graded question types classic quiz there. Is there anyone who does not see under quizzes this classic quiz? Notice it has a rocket ship. I have no idea why a rocket ship represents a quiz in Canvas, but by gosh, it does. Notice that the rocket ship is not filled in. It's, you know, the middle, it does not have any coloring or anything. And I'll show you in a second why that makes a difference. Okay, so I've got this classic quiz. As with most things in Canvas, if you go usually to the far right of it, you'll find a 3-dot menu that lets you do something to that item in Canvas. If I click on this 3-dot menu here, notice I now have an option that lets me migrate a copy of this classic quiz over to a new quiz. So again, I'm under quizzes. Here's my classic quiz. To the far right, I'm clicking on the 3-dot menu. And I'm going to select migrate. And let it start spinning. And we'll see what we do to the system when we have 40 people doing this all at once. Shouldn't be that big a deal, especially since we're hosted on Amazon Web Services. Okay, mine just finished. Notice one of the quick ways that you can tell if a quiz is a classic or a new quiz. The new quiz is kind of dark filled in the middle here, where the one up top doesn't have any filling in the middle. My classic quiz is published. My new quiz, as I did the migration, came over as unpublished, so students cannot see my new quiz. So this is where, as you're in one of your classes here in Canvas, you might migrate something. You may not choose to show that to your students, but you could at least see, well, how did this come over? And then I would have you click on this new quiz and go through and start checking and seeing, how did this question look on the classic quiz and how does it look on the new quiz? But I just wanted you to show that's how easy it is to, in general, migrate a quiz over to Canvas. But then as we would do with any kind of migration, I would suggest you would then go in and you would check each question and you would double check that everything looks correct. When we've done our testing, the migrations are working very well. Come over, the same right answers and so forth are noted. As the issues we talked about was if I use the LaTeX math formula, moving over to the math quill formula, that might need some adjusting. If I had done some special formatting or tables or things like that, I probably might need to take a look at that just to see, did they come over the way that I wanted them to do, or do they might need a little bit of tweaking and so forth. But in general, it should come over pretty well. So just wanted to show you how you can migrate a quiz. I would suggest you do that in one of your courses when you get a chance and then just see how it did. All right, so that's our number one. You have now migrated your first new quiz. Let's move on to item number 2 and let's start creating a new quiz. So I'm back in my training course. I'm on my quizzes area. I'm going to click plus quiz in the top right-hand corner. And at the start of the semester, actually the start of the summer, we turned on this feature which says, you want to create a new quiz. Do you want to create it as a classic quiz or a new quiz? We're going to select new quiz. And then click submit. So something that's a little different from a classic quiz. Normally in a classic quiz, I would then automatically be on like the quiz creation page. In Canvas, I get what would normally be an assignment page. So I can give this a name, Kevin new quiz. Notice here, and this is kind of important, and you can change this a little bit down the road, but in a classic quiz, the points are automatically determined for you. So if you create 10 questions on a classic quiz, each worth 5 points apiece, then automatically the quiz will be worth 50 points. As I come into new quizzes, I need to be thinking about how am I going to design this quiz? Is it going to be 10 questions with 5 points apiece, or however I'm going to design it? What do I think those total number of questions are? Because ideally, I want the points that I'm going to list here, which is going to be used eventually to create the grade in the grade book, that it should match ideally the number of points that I have on the quiz. I technically could make this differ. You know, I could say, well, the quiz has 10 questions, each with 5 points apiece. So that would be 50 points on the quiz, but I can go back here and say, but I'm going to make it worth 100 points. And then that gets interesting in terms of you'd have to look at the math and the questions you would get from your students. So you could technically make this different than the actual points that are on the quiz. I personally wouldn't, because I wouldn't want all the questions from the students, but I've talked to a couple of folks who occasionally might want to deviate on this one. But I would just come in here and I would want the points here usually to match what the total would be when we create our quiz. It's happens to be in a assignment group there. It's called imported assignments. I'm going to show it as points. I can see it's going into that external tool because it's technically an LTI that Canvas administers on their back end. Here's where I could normally do my assigning of who does it when, due dates, and so forth. Then down here in the bottom right, notice I have a build button. So once I've kind of filled in the name and the points, I want to come down here and I want to click build. And that takes me into the build page for this new quiz that I've called Kevin New Quiz. Notice right here, this is where I could put instructions. I get my content editor here, so I could add an image or a video or another file if I wanted to download something as part of this, as maybe they're doing something with a quiz or an essay of some sort. Okay. And then let's take a look up here and let's start picking this apart. I'm going to go, we're moving into, we're starting to create a new quiz. Let's take a look at settings here. So notice here, one I like, over here, I like to see this menu expanded. So notice here, it's got this arrow up here, and I don't always remember what the different icons mean. So I like to click on this arrow so I can see what these are. Oh, I can see instructions and title. As I add questions, I'll see those get added to the list here. So I can kind of see the structure of my quiz. Let's click up here at the top. I'm on the build tab right now. Let's click on settings at the top. So here's where I can turn on, they're all off by default, but here's where I can say, well, do I want to shuffle the questions? So it's a quiz I'm not pulling from item banks, so I'm not randomizing that way, but do I want to take the 10 questions that I'm about to show you and, you know, my question 3 might be Jeremy's question 7, or Cecilia might see, 2 where I see 7. So I can turn that on here. Here's where I can turn on shuffle answers. So within those multiple choice questions or multiple answer questions, my A might be Isabel's C. So again, a way to randomize it and make it maybe a little more challenging for students to perhaps borrow from one another. Of course, the flip side is when I go into Speedgrader and start to grade, if I'm shuffling the answers, then I can't go in and say, oh, question 5, the answer was C. Well, no, it might be B for this student or C for that student or D for that student. Canvas will grade it correctly, but you'll have to remember as you're moving through those questions that, for each student, the actual answer could be a possible, not A, but B for me and C for Claudia. Do I want to display one question at a time? The way that I've designed my test is have given you a certain amount of information. You've answered the question based on that. Now you're going to move on to the next question. Similar to classic quizzes. Allow backtracking is the idea that I show you one question at a time, but I could go back to question 2 if I needed to refer back to it. Or if I uncheck this, it would say, nope, once you answered question 2 and moved on to question 3, you cannot go back to question 2. So that's what this allows here, and that's very similar to what we have in current classic quizzes. Access code is basically a password, similar to classic quizzes. You can, if you want to kind of control access to that, you're doing something with a proctor, or you're just trying to make sure that nobody jumps in a little bit too early to start working on this quiz, I can set an access code password. Here's the time limit. I'm going to go ahead and set this to 60 minutes. Filter by IP address, we really don't use that at CSU. This would be a way where, if I was giving a quiz and they were all taking place in a computer lab on campus, I could set this up that said, hey, if it didn't have this particular IP address or a computer address that matches the computers that are in this particular computer lab, then don't let the student take the exam. So it's I don't know if in 15 years of supporting online systems, that's been extremely rare to see that used. Do I want to allow a calculator or not? If so, basic or scientific? Here's the allow multiple attempts option. If I were to turn that on, well, how many? Is it, is it unlimited, or is it, I'm going to put here maybe to 2? And if I'm going to keep a score, am I keeping the average, the latest, the first? What would be which score that I'm going to keep for those students? And then here, notice here's that new waiting period. I can check this box and say, no, you've got to wait, at least 30 minutes. Similar to swimming, I don't want you to get a cramp from taking quizzes too quickly too often. So I want you to take the quiz, have a cooling off period. Hopefully you're going to go review some of your materials and then come back and give it another shot. And then notice one thing I really want to point out is, by default, Restrict Student Result View is off. What does that mean? As soon as the student finishes the quiz, they get to see everything. They get to see the questions, they get to see what answer they gave, they get to see whether it was correct or incorrect, and they get to see the correct answers. So one of the things that you just need to be very aware of with new quizzes, you always want to go to the settings and make sure these are set the way you want them to be. They are off by default. So I want to turn these on. And then I get all these different options. I want you to see what was your score. Points awarded and maybe your overall score. Do I want you to be able to see the questions? And if so, what your response was? Do I want you to be able to see whether it was correct or incorrect? Do I want you to be able to see the correct answers? Do I want you to see if I used, I can't remember who asked about item feedback, but do I want you to be able to see item feedback? So unless you normally let students see everything after a quiz, always remember that when you're creating a new quiz, you want to come in here and you want to go in and check these settings. And you want to get down to the setting and decide what do you want to show students right after they finish taking the quiz. What's missing from this one that's in classic quizzes? Anybody recognize something that we don't have here just yet? In classic quizzes, I can set show the correct answers, but after a certain date occurs. So I can come in here and say, don't show the correct answers right now, but after the due date, or on September 5th or something like that, then the students can see the correct answers. I don't have that automation in new quizzes just yet. So if it's one of those where initially you don't want them to see something, but then after a little bit of time you do want them to see something, you'd have to come in here and pop into this quiz, jump on settings, and then come back here and maybe check items that you now want them to be able to see.
Okay.
And so currently it's just, Andre, you're asking why it's just currently not built into the new quiz feature. Don't know what will be coming down the pike, but for now, you would need to kind of do a reminder for yourself on a calendar or something to remember to jump in and release the answers if that's what you'd like to do. Will it happen eventually? I certainly hope so, but at this point, I'm not making any guarantees on behalf of Instructure. So I hope this comes in, but I don't know for sure. So yep, I agree. But yeah, you'll have to kind of come in here and kind of manually manage this, at least as we get started with new quizzes. So those are the settings. When I first come in, I normally would probably come in here and do that. Might be one of the first things that I'm going to do. So let's take a look at our exercises. Where are we at? All right, we went ahead and applied 60 minutes. We allowed 2 attempts. We required 30 minutes in between. We showed how you could restrict the student view and that you do need to take that step if you don't want the students to see everything right after they finish a quiz. Let's take a look at the time accommodations. I'm working with a student with Student Disability Center. They have provided the documentation necessary to achieve a learning accommodation here at CSU. And one of those is that they get an additional time when they take quizzes in Canvas. So if I go back into my training course, up here at the top, if I click Moderate, you should be able to see your test student in here. And I've already tweaked mine, but so what you can do is you can come over here to where it says Accommodations, and I click on the pencil icon. And here's where I've got a couple of different choices. I can give just additional time for this particular quiz. Oh, excuse me. No, excuse me. It'll be for all course assessments. So if I give additional time, do they always get an extra 30 minutes or an extra 15 minutes because my quizzes are all 60 minutes? I could do that. Or I like this new multiplier. The student always gets 1.5 because usually that learning accommodation letter that comes from SDC usually says something along these lines. They get 2x, they get 1.5x more than their peers to be able to complete their quiz. So I like the time multiplier where I can just set it to 1.5 or 2.0 or whatever that would be. And now it will apply now to all quizzes in this course in Canvas. So that's a nice feature compared to classic quizzes where I always had to do it for each individual quiz. If I had one or more students who needed an accommodation, I'd have to set that on each individual quiz for each student who might need an accommodation. And then I would click Save to make that stick. Okay, questions about, I'm not going to do reports right now, but build, settings, and moderate. Let's see. Is there a way to lock down the browser? There is if you use Respondus lockdown browser. I think Ali was asking, but not built within Canvas, either for classic or for new quizzes. Let's go create a question. So now we're moving our way through our exercises here. I'm on number 5, create a multiple choice question. So let's get into I'm going to go back up here to the build tab in the top left. And here I can see the start of my quiz. And if I click on this plus button right here, it brings up all the different question types that I could add to this particular new quiz. So I'm going to go find multiple choice. And question title, and similar to classic quizzes, cannot be seen by students. It's there for your organization so that as you quickly look at the title, it'll hopefully jog your memory about, oh yeah, that's what I'm asking on this question. Here I'm going to pick on, I'm going to once again do CSU president. And then the question stem is the actual question that I'm going to ask my students as of this person is the president of CSU. Yep, that's what I would want to do, is become a president at a university in the last year and a half. No stress whatsoever. All right, and here's where I can type in. So here I'll put in maybe our previous president, Tony Frank. And notice here the question was, I can give feedback either on the overall question, and I'll show you that here in a second, or per answer. You know, I could put here, you know, no, Tony is not the current president. Tony was president from X to X, but he's not our current president as of 2021. I can go down here and go to the next person, Albert Yates. Dr. Yates was president back at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. So I served as president, but not our current president. I'll put in here, Joyce McConnell. I always like Joyce's last name. If they allowed proper names in Scrabble, that would earn you a lot of points with all the double consonants there. And again, I could put Cam Ram here if I want. And then I just have to select, as we do in classic quizzes, which one is the actual correct answer. In this case, obviously, Dr. McConnell. And here's where whether I need an on-screen calculator for this particular question. Vary points by answers. I haven't played with this too much. You know, are some questions worth, some possible answers worth more than other possible answers? Here's where I could shuffle choices for just this question if I wanted to. Here's where I can decide how many points. So remember, I'm going to go ahead and make this, I think, 5 points for this particular question. And here's that overall feedback item here. If you can see the bubbles down here, hoping that my screen is large enough for folks to see. Might be a little bit too much. Let's try that. But here's where I could say, you know, for a correct answer, yes, this information is correct. For if the student gave an incorrect answer, they would see, hey, remember we covered this information in chapter 5 in the textbook. Perhaps you could go back and review that chapter or so forth. So similar to classic quizzes, I can provide feedback either on the overall question or for each possible answer, I could give some feedback. Okay. And that is, you've now built your first question in a new quiz. Yep, so let's think here. So Liz is asking, you know, if she did this and she marked a particular answer, students take the quiz and then they come back and You know, they make a point for it. You know, there's another possible answer for this, or perhaps that wasn't the correct answer. Yep, there's a way, both in classic quizzes and new quizzes, there's a regrade feature where you can come in and say, nope, this was the correct answer, or I'll accept A and B, and it will let you regrade and do that. So yep, there is a way to do that. Okay, so that's our multiple choice question. And remember, we also up here, let's see here. So yep, we've got that information in here. Remember, I had here, it's still the rich content editor. So if I wanted to, you know, if this is a question about, who knows, you know, I'm doing statues or something like that. If I wanted to show an image in here, I can upload an image and be able to say, you know, this statue is a statue of X, Y, or Z. Okay, so let's take a look here. So we have now created our multiple choice question. Let's move on to a fill in the blank question. So down to the bottom, I'm clicking on the plus button to add a new type of question. I'm going to do fill in the blank. Let's think here. I'm going simple. I'm doing a poem. Right here. And so here's where I'm going to type where I want them to fill in the blanks. I'm doing roses are red. Violets are blue. And Andrea, you can translate that Spanish if you need to. And so as I type the statement, I've got roses are red, violets are blue, and I want them to fill in red. So if I double click on red and hit enter on my keyboard, that then becomes the word that they won't see. They'll see roses are blank and violets are, and I'm going to double click on blue and hit enter. Okay, so now I can see these will be the two items that the students will have to fill in, red and blue. And so here, open entry is I want them to type the answer. And I have to double check. Drop down is where I could provide some other possible, you know, of these 4 items, which is the correct answer. And word bank, I haven't really played with word bank, so I'm not sure what that one does. I'll have to try that one at a different time. I'm going to leave it at open entry. So here's where, now the text match, here's where I get that new feature about fill in the blank. Basically, I'm saying it has to contain the word red. It can be capital R-E-D, it can be R-E-D, but it's got to be R-E-D. If I do my drop-down menu next to this word, I can say close enough. So here's where Levenstein comes in. Can you get within? So if they were to type, if I set this to one character, if they typed rad, R-A-D, well, that's within 1 letter, so they would get credit for typing rad instead of red. Or I can make it within 2 letters or 3 letters, however I want to do that. And here, notice I can say spelling only and ignore case. So by default, now this is turned on with the Levenstein distance saying, hey, it's got to be, if there's capitalized, it's got to be capitalized. But here's where I can say, nope, just ignore it. If I do the drop-down menu here, I can do an exact match. No, the spelling is really, really, really important. You're talking about a pharmaceutical that you're going to prescribe to a patient, and off by 1 letter might be a totally different drug. Nope, it's got to be exact match, and it's got to be, you know, capitalized if capitalized. Specify correct answers. This is what I could do in the old classic quizzes, right? This is where, if the word was Shakespeare, this is where I could give 4 different spellings of Shakespeare and say, well, if you spelled it at least one of these 4 ways, Canvas would know then to accept it as a correct answer and grade it accordingly. And regular expression match, I have not figured out how to do regular expression match. We used to have this in the old, I think, WebCT system. And our expert on this has long left CSU, but that one I don't know how to do just yet. But the most common one would be, you know, no, it's got to be this, regardless of spelling. Close enough within a certain amount, and whether spelling should count or not, or excuse me, capitalization should count or not. And then, as we saw, specify correct answers. So I'm going to leave mine at close enough. So if you want to type roses are rad, it won't rhyme, but I'll give it to you. And then I can do the same thing then for the next possible entry for blue. Do I set that the same? Is this different for some reason? Does this one have to be capitalized for whatever reason or something like that? But for each word that I want them to fill in the blank, I get to specify what I'll accept so the Canvas would grade it correctly automatically. That's any questions on how to do a fill in the blank question? Let's see where we're at here. You know what, I show it is 10:56. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Let's come back at about, let's say, 11:01. and we'll pop back in. But let's take a break here for a second. So I'm going to hop off here and get a drink of water, and I will see folks in about 5 minutes. All right, I'm showing it's coming back up on 11:01. So let me just bring my screen up again so we can see where we're at here. Let's bring And up on here, make sure my Teams is coming up so I can see chat. Okay. And can folks see my screen okay? Can somebody give me a thumbs up or nod your head or something in the chat? Okay, good. Thank you for that feedback. All right, let's see where we're at here. We are still working our way through creating a new quiz and some of the different question types. So we just finished number 6, how to do a fill in the blank question. Let's go to number 7 and let's work on how to create a hotspot question. I had sent out for folks who received my email who had registered as of yesterday afternoon, I sent a number of files which included a couple of images. So for the folks who got that email, you've got a hotspot, you've got an image of the United States. Folks who maybe didn't get that handout, if you've got another image you'd like to work with on your computer, you're welcome to do that, or just watch kind of what's going on here on the screen. But let's walk through how you can create a hotspot question in Canvas. So here, I was just finishing here. And you know what? I made this one worth 5 points, my multiple choice. My fill in the blank, I just automatically let it click there and it was 1 point. I'm going to edit by clicking on the pencil icon. And I want to make this to be also 5 points too. And now I can click on to the next one. And also notice here, next to each question here, this icon would be saying duplicate this question, which is in the quiz you took as a student. This is what I was playing with and forgot that I had duplicated questions. But if I like the format of this question, or I'm going to keep building on a certain question, so I'm kind of using the same format, I could click here and I could duplicate a version of this question and that would appear on the quiz. And then I could modify maybe the second version of that question to match what's the next question I want to ask about that topic. Down here, I'm going to click on plus, and I'm going to choose the new hotspot item right here. And so it wants the question title, where's Colorado? Or Waldo, or whoever you're looking for. And notice here, it's asking you to go find what image do you want to add to this question for the students to have to use. Let's think where I've got one here. Let's go to training. So again, for those folks who had sent that file to, if you have that US map, you can go ahead and use that one, or you can pick a different one if you'd like. Quizzes. And here's mine. This is the one I sent out yesterday. It has to be a US dates map.png. I'm selecting that one. And it adds that image. And again, if you don't have the map one, pick a different one off your computer if you'd like, or just watch what we're doing here. So now I've got the image here, and then it wants me to say, what am I highlighting? In this case, I'm telling them to pick Colorado. So I'm going to pick here as close as I can there. And then here's the question, please identify or please click on. Okay, and then I've got a couple I can do in an oval. I can do something in a polygon where I can get a bit more creative, which I could probably actually do the exact square of Colorado, but I'm not going to do that one just yet. And so they just have to click somewhere on Colorado here to be able to get the points. And again, I'll make sure that this is worth 5 points also. And that's pretty much how easy it is to do a hotspot question. Any questions on a hotspot question? It's a nice new tool. Again, if you're working with SDC and you have a student who has a sight impairment, then this would be a type of question that they would not be able to answer. So you might have to, in that scenario, decide whether or not you would either offer this and just go in and give that student credit for the question even though they couldn't complete it, or whether you would just not include a hotspot question at all if you've got a student with a sight impairment in your course. Okay, so that's our hotspot. Let's go create a stimulus question. So that's that also kind of neat new question that I like a lot. So I'm going to scroll down here so I can get to my plus button. And I'm going to click on the stimulus option. And I'm going to recreate. I'm not going to recreate the wheel. I'm going to pick on Dr. McConnell again. Instructions, if there's any, yada, yada, yada. And then the content here, I'll make this a little bit larger as I can here. And I can make this box a little bit bigger here too. So they have a place here. If you had taken this from a website, then you could put in that website here. It would be visible to you and not to the students, just as information for you as to what was the source of the information in the stimulus question. Because web pages and websites can disappear, it's not showing the actual website in here. Usually what you have to do is you have to go then to the website and copy and paste the information. So let's go see if I've got mine here, class files. So I had gone to website and I had copied and pasted the information. So here's the URL of where I got this. It happened to be a source article here at CSU. So I would put that in as a reminder myself of where's this question coming from? What am I doing here? Let me go find make sure I'm in the right window here. So here's my stimulus question. This is just going to go in here for me to remember where I pulled this information. And then I had copied and pasted the information I wanted from that source document. I just happened to throw it into Word, though I certainly could have copied and pasted right from the web page into here. And then I'm going to copy that text over here into this text box. And I have to go back through here and see, does it look like it was formatted okay? Is it easy to read? And that looks okay. Okay, and then I would click here and say add stimulus. And so, and you know what? I wanted to do one more thing. I'm going to go back in here, just a second here. I'm going to edit this. I wanted to add a picture of Dr. Mcconnell here. So let's add a space here. Let me go find that picture on my local computer. And here's my picture of Dr. McConnell. Actually, I should probably be, and alt text. Remember, usually almost always when you're adding an image to any web page and anywhere in Canvas, again, in the possibility that you're working with a student who has a sight impairment and they're using specialized software to read what's on the page because they can't likely see everything that's on the page. We want some kind of information when they hit an image so they kind of know, when is that image pertinent to the discussion, or is it more flowery or something just to kind of make the home page look nice or something along those lines. But here I'd probably put photo of President McConnell. And we'll put that up in here. So now I've got, again, to spruce up this question a little bit, I've added a picture of President McConnell. I'll maybe take out this extra space here, and then I'll say save stimulus. Okay, so I've got a picture of I keep saying Dr. McConnell, which she is, but she's also the president, so it's President McConnell. And as I look at this, I'd probably go in and add some spaces because I'm finding that probably not as easy to read for students, so I probably would edit that here in a second. But notice now that I've saved the stimulus part over here on the left side, now here's where I can add questions related specifically to, the information, the article that I had them read here on the left. I don't know, I'll probably put multiple choice here. Where from? President McConnell. And we'll spell it correctly. Or not. Then we'll just go to spell check. Came to CSU from, and we know, I'll put the second one, this is going to be West Virginia. Hey, good. We know that's the correct answer. New York, sure. Connecticut. And maybe one more. I think that'll be enough here. I can add additional answers if I needed them. Again, I've got the different options normally here. How many points is that particular, the overall stimulus question, is that all overall going to be worth 5 points? So maybe this one's worth 1. And then I could add additional ones. Maybe I add 5 1-point questions associated with the stimulus to come up with a total of 5 points associated with that stimulus question. But that's a neat new question type that we don't have on classic quizzes, which can really, again, provide you with more options and ways to work with your students in terms of how to create and put together your new quiz. And let's close that one up here. I can now close my stimulus information. Did it work okay to work the stimulus question? You get a feel for what that workflow looks like and what it takes to create one of those? assuming everybody's not on Snapchat or Facebook right now, but so we've now created our stimulus question. And I'm going to click done here. And then I'm going to go to return here at the top. I want to go back and see, so this is my Kevin new quiz. I can see it's got, again, the filled in rocket ship. I would want to double check and see how many points did I just add to that question? And does that match the number of points that I put here that I said the quiz would be worth? So that's one of the things you want to double check. And notice here when I come back into the quiz, I have the option here to preview. So I can see what this quiz is going to look like to my students. How do the questions display? How do those images display? How do my formulas display? So it's a good way to take a look at those. And just kind of see how it kind of looks to students, and it can be scored the way a student would be taking the quiz and see that the scoring is working the way that I would like it to work also. All right, and I'm going down here, and it looks like I'm going to move into kind of the last thing that we're going to talk about, at least in terms of the hands-on portion of this workshop, is let's take a look at an item bank. So when I'm item banks, the only way I can get to an item bank is I have to go into a new quiz. So I have to either create a new quiz or have an existing new quiz. And so as you can see, we're in a new quiz right now. Notice I get the item bank option here. So if I click on item bank, this is where I could build an item bank of questions. And this is where I can see, all the different banks here, all my course banks. But if I click plus bank here, I can create a bank called training questions and create a bank. And then if I wanted to, I could go back to my quiz. And notice here, I'll go to my first multiple choice question and I'll edit it by clicking on the pencil icon. And I can go ahead and put this question for reuse. I can go ahead and put it into one of my existing item banks. Here's the one I just created called training questions, and I can click add. Okay, so this is just reminding me that if I ever want to update this question, because I'm pulling it from an item bank, I need to go into the item bank and edit the question there. So that's just making sure I've got that information. And it shows me that question in the item bank. So that gives you an idea of what it takes to create an item bank. You go in, you click item bank, and different than classic quizzes, in classic quizzes, right within a question bank in classic quizzes, I can create questions right here. In new quizzes, the question has to exist on a new quiz, and then once it does, I can add it to an item bank. And then Allie, I see you're asking, sorry, I missed your question. Before we move on, question about quiz points. Yep, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. It'd probably be easier for me to say it than type it. So if you are, so I've got my new quiz. I think I'm still in build mode, and I guess I didn't like publish or save it. But when I went back, and it still said it was worth 0 points. So is there a way that I can have it automatically calculate the point value, or do I have to type that in?
You have to type it in. So that's kind of one, it gives you more flexibility, but on the flip side, I personally like the auto calculation, so I know it matches up. But so yeah, you can go back in and edit that when you go into under quizzes. And when you first click on the new quiz, you have the option there then to set the overall points that will be used for its calculations in the gradebook.
Sounds good. And if they don't match, is that okay? Like if I want it to be 10 points, but or will that just make it go bonkers?
Yeah, I think you can do that, but then it's just double checking and explaining to students.
Okay.
Yeah, I know when you added it up and you saw it with the quiz was worth 50 points, but I'm making it worth 100 points in the grade book, and it's behind the scenes. It's doing a calculation to say, well, of those 50 points, and out of the 100% that you could have gotten of those 50 points, you got this percentage. So I think you're likely to get more math questions from your students if they and again, you might have a perfectly good reason for doing that, but then just be able to explain it well to your students.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Okay, yep. Other questions on new quizzes. So we've kind of covered a fair amount. And that kind of covers at least the basics that I wanted to show folks to get you comfortable with how do you migrate a quiz, and then how do you start to create a quiz? What are the different options you can do on a quiz? And I think the goal now would be to get you to try migrating one of your quizzes and see what it looks like. Try maybe creating a quiz on your own and see what that looks like. Play with some of the new question types. Perhaps think about this semester, might you show a new quiz or two to your students just to see what's the experience for them, what's the experience for you from a grading perspective. How does the new quiz look in Speedgrader compared to classic quizzes? Pretty similar, but it looks a little bit different, but not too much. But we taking into account as you look at your current course and think, well, I know by when do I teach this course next? If let's say you're not teaching in summer 2022, but you know in fall 2022, everything has to be new quizzes. What backing up from that timeline, what do you need to be doing this fall and next spring to make sure that you would be then ready to teach in fall of 2022? If you're pretty sure you're teaching in summer of 2022, well, that's May. And it seems like a long way away, but we all know by the time you get really busy teaching in the fall and probably teaching in the spring, all of a sudden that's going to go really, really fast. So be thinking about if you're having to teach a summer course, what do you need to be doing now? Could you be migrating quizzes right now? Again, whether or not you show those to your students as new quizzes just yet, but you might be going in and cleaning up those quizzes a little bit. We are expecting a broader migration tool, a tool that would let me migrate lots of stuff at CSU all at once. I don't know for sure what that's going to look like, when that's going to come through, and how much testing we will get to do before we might take a look at playing with that migration tool. That's not expected to maybe December or January, and we'll keep the campus up to date as new features or new items like that pop up. But knowing the timeline, just be starting to take that into account, and what are the things that you feel like you would need to do so that you can comfortably get there by summer 22 or fall 22, given which one you're going to teach in, and feel like you'll be ready for new quizzes. That's the basics of this workshop. So I'm going to stop recording the workshop, and then I am happy to hang out and see, do you have other questions on new quizzes?